Hello and welcome to Let's All Laugh At, the football podcast that thrives on the expense of someone else. I'm George and I'm joined as always by Andrew. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Exciting week of football, so lots to talk about today.
Yep, no Alex, unfortunately. He's busy with other commitments, unfortunately, for this week. But that's alright, we can make do with that for the time being. We can slate Chelsea as much as we want now. But anyways,
I think he would slate Chelsea as well, judging by their performance.
That's true, yeah. No, well let's start there, shall we? Let's start with Chelsea's game against West Ham, because I was the one who said last week as well that West Ham didn't have a hope of staying up, and then they go and do that. So,
yeah, I think it was a brilliant game to watch. To be honest, saw two teams really going for it. I think Frank Lampard will be quite annoyed at their defending. He's had issues with Kepa all season, where he dropped him for a bit, played Caballero. He's a world record for a goalkeeper at 75 million, and for me, he was very poor. Not for me. His biggest issue is he is actually a good shot stopper, but he doesn't dominate his box, and he looks quite lightweight. He hasn't filled out yet, so I think there'll be more. I think it was very strongly rumoured earlier in the year that Lampard wanted a new goalkeeper, looking at the Ajax goalie Anana, but I think performance like that is more likely to go get a new keeper.
yeah, no, I agree. I think obviously the Kepa situation has been well documented at Chelsea for a while now. I was sort of thinking that with Sarri going, and obviously they had that bust up in the League Cup final. I was thinking with Sarri going and Lampard coming in, they might be able to repair things a bit, but I guess not. I suppose his problems lie deeper than with just the manager. And yeah, like you said, I think he's a great shot stopper.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a great shot stopper, but he's not consistent enough when he's coming out of his box to claim the ball.
Yeah, no. I mean, we had a similar problem with Wayne Hennessy for a long time, but then he stopped being good at shot stopping as well. So there's not much you can say there. I won't keep this about Palace. Don't worry.
The Ben Mee goal, I think the goalie was a bit.
Well, I was going to say we're going to talk about that as little as possible, but don't worry, we'll get a moment to mention that. But yeah, definitely disappointing from Guaita there for sure. But yeah, certainly. I mean, we have to praise West Ham. Obviously, I think the one player for me that really stood out for them was Declan Rice. I thought he was brilliant all game. I thought he showed what when West Ham fans especially hype him up and people don't always get it. I think he showed today why they do so and why he got his place in the England team. Settled in so quickly. Granted, he hasn't been the best for England, but I've always said, he's give him a chance. He's young. He's still learning, and if he keeps up putting performances like that, then I think we've got a real player on our hands.
Yeah, I think I saw one of his first games for West Ham when I saw him live, and I thought, wow, that kid's going to be really good. And he's made some huge. I think he had a spell where he was playing really, really well, and then he's dropped off. I think he struggled a bit with the England criticism because people feel that if you play Rice and Henderson, you lose some attacking impetus, especially when we've got the likes of Grealish, Maddison, Mason Mount available in those positions. But I thought he was excellent as well. I think it's difficult when you're playing for a struggling team, but let's say he was at one of the bigger clubs, he probably would have been dropped. So he's been able to play through it. So he's gained experience and so forth. But yeah, I think it's another kid West Ham have produced, so they should really be proud of their youth system.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously they had a problem with their right back in Gakia, who's now left the club after failing to agree contract extensions, another product of their academy. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, as for Rice, I think he's definitely made the right decision. I mean, I'm not sure how many clubs were in for him last summer, but he was definitely made the right decision to stay at West Ham either way. And I think that there's rumours of clubs going after him this summer as well, but I feel like even though he is a very good player and could definitely play in one of the bigger teams, I'm not sure they would be starting him straight away, and I think he's better off
I don't think he's good enough yet. I think he needs maybe another year, because the problem is you always worry about if you move too soon, and I think there's so many players. Example is Zaha at Man United. Someone who probably moved a bit too early. And then it takes a bit of time for you to recover. So you probably just hold fire. If he plays really well, he should get that dream move to one of the top 6 clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased on the whole Zaha thing. I think it was a combination of both over ambition at the start and lack of man management, lack of squad management with Zaha. But that's a topic for another day.
Mm.
But yeah, I think what shocked me the most about West Ham was their attitude. I mean, I've seen this, I've learned this from watching Roy Hodgson. You know, when you just have those games when you're really pushed against the wire and you need a result, you're somehow able to turn on these great performances against these great teams, even when your football isn't particularly exciting a lot of the time. So it's a strange one for them, and I think
they've got some very good attacking quality.
They do.
Yarmolenko, Felipe Anderson, Haller, they're not cheap as well.
No, they're not. Jared Bowen as well. Yeah. No, I'm not saying that.
Antonio is a handful as well. They have got some players. They're all on big money as well. I think their main issue has been they had the keeper issues when Fabianski was out.
Yeah.
But they were quite slow in the middle. Especially when there were games where Noble and Wiltshire played together. But they were better yesterday. But yeah, I think they should always score goals. It's a good result for them, especially when everyone else is really struggling at the bottom.
No, I'm not saying they don't have attacking players. They obviously do. They've got a lot of talent in that squad. But I mean, the way that they played, against Wolves, against who else was it they played? I forgot who else they played. But in those two games, they didn't really show much excitement, much creativity. Spurs, that was it. Spurs away. They didn't really show much urgency and much creativity. I mean, I think they played Bowen centrally for the start for those two games, which was quite bizarre. But yeah, there were a lot of players out of position. They didn't even have a striker on the pitch for those two games. So, but yeah, definitely a big result for them. And for Chelsea, I mean, they are still in the top four, but United and Wolves are clawing in on them.
Yeah, I think Wolves are I think United with Bruno have got a great chance. He was excellent in their game against Brighton.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to that, because that was actually quite a surprising result for me. Because, I mean, United don't have a good history against Brighton in the Premier League. They've lost both of their trips there since they were promoted. And obviously Brighton have had a pretty solid start, or had a pretty solid start to the restart before now. Obviously beating Arsenal and then getting a point at Leicester, nearly winning. So yeah, I was expecting them to turn up another result against United, but I mean they totally played them off the park. I thought they were excellent, and like you said, for me, Bruno Fernandes was the standout.
Yeah, he's been the best player since lockdown has been reduced. So he's and as well, I think when you have an upgrade from so before they were playing either Lingard or Andreas Pereira, when you have a player like Bruno Fernandes, he brings out the best in other players because he's able to take the ball on both sides. The players in front of him are appreciating him. Mason Greenwood scored a lovely goal for someone so young. For me, he's got fantastic finishing. He probably just needs to build up the other sides of his game. But his finishing, the way he took that shot so early, is what a refined striker does. So I think definitely United's midfield has come on loads, but that's what you get when you spend 60-odd million.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say spending 60-odd million, but I mean, you look at a lot of Manchester United's big money buys in the past. The likes of Pogba, Lukaku, Fred. They haven't been bad by any means, but for the money that they've spent, you'd expect they deliver a lot more. And I think we can all agree that Bruno Fernandes is definitely much better value for money. I mean, yes, when you're spending that much money on a player, you would expect him to deliver, but he has actually been delivered consistently for less than 6 months of football that he's been playing as well. I think it's been a very good bit of business from them.
Yeah, I think it seems to me at the moment you can't go wrong with Portuguese signings. All the Portuguese players who've come in have just been brilliant. Bernardo Silva, all the Wolves boys, and Bruno Fernandes as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously, a Euro winning side a few years ago. I'm not sure how many of those players were actually in the team then. I know Patricio was the goalkeeper, obviously, and I think Moutinho was in the side as well at Wolves. Don't know how many of the others though. I imagine they were knocking around the squad as well. Yeah. But yeah, as for Brighton, like I said, bit of a sort of wake up call for them, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I've watched Brighton a few times. I don't think they're a very good team. I'm not
going to argue that.
They seem to play well against Arsenal, but I think they're not a very good team.
But the thing about Brighton is they have a lot of possession. They do pass it around quite nicely, but they just don't make the most of it. They don't take their chances that much.
I find the way they started the season well, so they decided to give Graham Potter a 6-year deal.
Yeah.
That was it's like, unless someone is going to go and take him off your hands, you do not need to sign that deal. I mean, it's difficult for them. They're not a big club, so they're going to struggle to attract players, obviously. You know, they've been burnt by a few of their signings. I mean, the one that comes to mind is they spent 15 million, I think, on Jurgen Locadia, and they bought. I was amazed when they let Knockout go, because whenever I watched Brighton, I thought he's their best player by far.
Yeah.
So I found that crazy when they let him go.
I mean, the other one for me is Andone. Obviously tore us to shreds in the derbies, both of them. But they are, and I was surprised he let them go. Apparently, it was like a dressing room bust-up. They weren't happy with him.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, I think they can offer much. I mean, you look at the players they've signed. Some of them have been good, like Mopé, and Trossard looks decent.
Yeah, Trossard is a good player.
Yeah, and then you've got players like, I think I read somewhere that their net spend over the past 5 years is like the 5th or 6th highest in the Premier League. Yeah. And they're near the bottom 6 every season. So it's quite alarming when you consider that. And they can't be spending that every single season. One, because of financial fair play, and two, because it's not sustainable for a club of their size. Even though they have got a good sized stadium, that's not always enough if you're spending this much money.
I think obviously with what's happened in the world with COVID, but teams really need to be careful. We've got a team who won the FA Cup not that long ago, who have just gone into administration, and that is, for me, the amount of wealth that Wigan had in the when they were in the Premier League. You remember they played in the Europa League. Yep. They shouldn't be. I mean, football, we need to be really careful, because it's to be just everything on the edge. It just shows you how fragile you can be. Portsmouth had the same thing, won the FA Cup a few years later. They're in administration, they're in League Two. Wigan the same. We really need to, I think football needs to take a long, hard look at itself about how it's financed, and is it too close to the belt? Like, okay, you really want to get promoted, but don't sacrifice that for financial stability, because I'm sure Wigan probably will go down now, I'm guessing.
It's a 12-point deduction there, so they want 50 points now in the Championship. Yeah, that'll take them to 38, bottom of the table.
They're going to go to League One, and this is a team that was in the Premier League for quite a few years under Roberto Martinez, played a lovely style of football. Let's remember, they won the FA Cup. They also got to a League Cup final not long ago as well. So we got to be careful. So Brighton should be careful as well.
Yeah, I mean, on that topic as well, there's a report saying Wigan could be, there's talks about being the tip of a large iceberg in the Football League, because obviously there's a lot of clubs, in lower leagues that have worse financial straits than Wigan do, and if they're going into administration, what's going to happen to them? I mean, it does open up a large question of how much intervention should there be to actually prevent these clubs to fail, or is it just a case of they're the ones that made the mistakes? But I think even that argument here, it's a global pandemic. No one could have done anything about it.
I agree. I think there is things which, so for instance, like League One and League Two clubs, they all operate on the border. A lot of them make losses. They don't even make profits. So then you remove, 3 months worth of gate receipts from their balance, and obviously they're all going to be tipping themselves because they've got employees to pay for and so forth. But clubs like, I read Sunderland were having financial. Sunderland have got a 50,000 stadium. Yeah, they've been in the Premier League for a long period of time. They've got to, these clubs shouldn't be that close. I can understand like the likes of Bury, these sorts of clubs, but not clubs like Wigan and Sunderland. It's just they're too big to have these issues.
Yeah, it does smack of mismanagement in a lot of cases. Obviously, Sunderland has been much more well documented than most due to the Netflix documentary. I'll be interested to see how that plays out for the next couple of seasons. But yeah, to bring Palace into this very briefly, people have our club have a go at the owners a lot, but in terms of financial responsibility, Al Turner, obviously there's a lot of outrage over not spending the Wan-Bissaka money. But in hindsight, if you look at our league position, it hasn't really suffered as a result of it. If anything, it's improved, even though it was a risky deal. We look to be bringing in a very talented player in Nathan Ferguson for a small amount of money very soon. Which might, again, it's a lot longer than we would have liked, but it is a replacement and it hasn't affected our position. And we've actually been able to use that money, one, to pay off our existing debts that we have and help turn over a profit for the first time in about 4 or 5 years, I think. I can't remember the exact accounts. But, the point I'm trying to get at is we have a group of owners who are... they bought the club when we were administration, when we were about, 60 minutes away from going under.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing about prudence versus ambition, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always going to come up.
And they have this, it's very much a never again attitude. Our number one goal is to make sure that we go nowhere near where we were when we took over. So I think that, again, like you say, I think particularly on social media with the rise of, with fans going on about ambition and wanting to see, and especially when a lot of teams look at teams like Wolves who have spent so much money and have come so far.
I think the thing that amazes me is that someone like Brighton, they're never going to get into the top, whatever. Just the location, the size of the club. But I do feel they get ripped off in the transfer market. Some of these clubs, some of the signings. I was watching Bournemouth, yesterday. Like Dominic Solanke cost £20 million.
Yeah.
What on earth? Why on earth would they spend 20 million on a player who was never going to get into the Liverpool first team ahead of Firmino? Was always a bench player for Liverpool. Like they do get ripped off. They really need to. Teams really need to be careful because they're getting ripped. Some of these Premier League clubs do. They see Premier League and they just say to them, "Oh yeah, 20 million."
Yeah.
For very average players as well.
Yeah, we were linked with Solanke. We were due to sign Solanke. I think it was on loan January before last, and then we pulled out because of the injury problem he was having. I think it's safe to say we dodged a bullet there. Yeah. We are looking at signing Jordan Ibe, I saw, on a free transfer. But for a free transfer, you can't really complain about that.
A free transfer makes sense. He's someone who, when he first broke through, looks like he was going to be. He's had a terrible time at Bournemouth, but yeah. He looked like he was going to be. So, free transfers, there's was the worst that could happen.
Exactly, yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it's definitely a fine balance between, like you said, prudency and ambition. It's about knowing where your limits are realistically, and while also working within your means to do as best you can. But it's a case again with social media. It's not something that all fans can understand. So yeah, we talked about two teams in the relegation scrap now, West Ham and Brighton. I looked at this a bit more last week, but now with the title decided officially, with obviously Liverpool having beaten Palace and then City losing to Chelsea the night we were recording the last podcast as well, which was quite funny. So yeah, with that decided, the relegation battle, apart from the European battle as well, but we'll get onto that shortly, is definitely the biggest thing left of note in the Premier League. So I thought we'd look at the teams, the results that we've had so far, and sort of look at their run-ins and see what they've got to do there. So we'll start with the very bottom of the barrel.
Norwich are going down.
Yeah.
Norwich are going down, and to be honest, I love Tim Krul. He was a great goalkeeper, but he is terrible now. He's good at penalties, but that's it. And I'm amazed that Daniel Farke didn't go and get another goalie, because Tim Krul is no.
He did. What was he? He got in. I think it was Farman they had with their backup keeper, but he's been injured for a long time now. So
this has been a constant. I've watched a few Norwich games, and I've seen Tim Krul struggle. He was a brilliant shot stopper, and he was great at short distance. He cannot move very well anymore. And
doesn't he have the record for the most saves?
In games 14 against Spurs.
Yeah,
but he can't. He had basically at the end of his Newcastle time, he got an ACL. And he was never the same, so that's why Rafa let him go. But Norwich, I think they had a nice experience. They played some nice football, but they didn't even try to stay up. So, but hopefully it sets them financially for a few years. I do find their existence in the Premiership a bit pointless, to be honest. They've come up a few times.
Yeah,
I think
they're the quintessential yo-yo club nowadays, aren't they?
They just go up. They come up, they may stay one more year and then they go down, and they never spend anything, and which is fine, that's fine for them. But they're this year, in January they didn't sign anyone. They almost had given up already. So I mean,
Yeah.
Camwell will get some good teams, and Godfrey, Aaron,
Max Aarons, Jamal Lewis.
Jamal Lewis. They'll all
Yeah.
get Prem
They've got some
titles.
excellent youngsters for sure. I'm sure a lot of
And I think Wendy is a good player actually.
Yeah, of course, Wendy
But the
as well.
rest of them they're all championship players.
Well, I mean, the thing about Norwich is, like you said, they do play some good football, but I don't think Tim Krul's been helped by the fact that football just leads to a lot of openness at the back and mistakes at the back. We saw it under Frank de Boer, even though the football we played wasn't that great to begin with anyway.
It was like 3 games, George. I don't feel you can judge someone on 3 or 4 games, I'll be honest.
We've discussed this before. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Norwich, I think they're a very well-run club in that, like we talked about before, they work within their means and they try to be a club that promotes youth and builds the infrastructure. And I think even their own sporting director Stuart Webber said that they are a couple of years ahead of schedule. So this season is very much a bonus for them. I think you're right.
I love these plans. When people say this, it makes no sense to me. We're a couple of years ahead of schedule. So what, you would have preferred not to have been promoted? It makes
but I mean, to me, what that means is that you have these ideas, you have these plans in mind to get these players in, but you don't necessarily think it will start paying off until about 3 or 4 years time.
Yeah,
that's what that means.
I always find that strange. Lots of people say, "Oh, we're ahead of time." For me, there was a spell where Daniel Farke looked like he was going to be sacked from Norwich. So, I think it was when they got promoted, it was quite a surprise that they got promoted because they weren't favourites that season.
Yeah.
They had this amazing year. So for me, they should have embraced it because you never know, you might not get another chance to come up. Look how long, Leeds look like they've come up now, but they've not been in the Premier League for 15, 16 years. Yeah. So, if you do get into the Premier League, you need to try and embrace it and stay in it. But
I think the thing with Norwich as well is that they've done this, like you said, they've done this so many times before, where they've come up and where they've seen the stars and they've thought that, they need to spend all this money to stay in the league, and that's the important thing. I think they want to try a different approach this time, and obviously it hasn't worked out as well. But yeah, moving on slightly, I mean, their last game was a 4-0 defeat away at Arsenal. I mean, isn't it just ironic? We slate them in the last podcast, and now ever since then they've smashed it. They beat Southampton the night we recorded. Sheffield United they beat in the FA Cup to go through to the semi-finals against Manchester City, and now they've smashed admittedly lowly Norwich, but still a lot better than some of the results they've had. I mean, I guess we should just start insulting teams we want them to win nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Aubameyang thing is probably the most pressing thing for Arsenal.
Yeah.
He reached 50 Premier League goals. I think he's the quickest striker to reach 50 Premier League goals for Arsenal. And when you think Thierry Henry, Ian Wright, I mean, that's an impressive feat for him. If I was him, I would leave. I'll be honest, I would leave. He's at his peak. He might not get another chance, and Arsenal won't be in the Champions League next year, and he deserves to be in the Champions League. I'm sure there'll be clubs, teams like PSG, Juve, all these clubs would take him because he's that good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there was never, when he joined, there was never whatever ambition they sold him on was never really there, and I think he's starting to realise that now. And I think that he can't. He's
too good for Arsenal.
For sure, especially in their current state. And I mean,
he's too good for Arsenal at the moment. He just has to look at some of the players who've left Arsenal. You just have to look at what Fabregas won with, Barca and Chelsea, Van Persie, Nasri. All these players have gone and won things after Arsenal, and he just needs, because if he stays, he might not win anything major. Yeah. For me, when we talk, he's that type of elite player. You should be really talking about him winning a Premier League or winning a Champions League.
Yeah,
he's that good. So staying around at Arsenal to fight for 6th, 7th place, just it's not good enough for him.
Yeah, no, and I think it'll be a tough job for Arsenal to replace him for sure. I think that if they think they had problems nowadays, wait until you've lost your top scorer, 25 goals a season striker. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out for Arsenal in the next couple of years. But yeah, definitely at least an encouraging couple of steps for them in the last couple of games, however temporary. So yeah, moving on to 19th place Bournemouth, and then who played your team, Newcastle. I mean, do you just want to go off on that? I mean, I'm not even sure what to say to that one. That was just an unbelievable result for you guys.
It was, but I'm going to be honest. Bournemouth were atrocious.
Yeah, they were.
absolutely atrocious. We've played Bournemouth over the last few years, and I've always thought that they have a nice style of play where they retain the ball, and I've also always thought that they're very organised and they have good attacking. For me, they don't retain the ball anymore. I think as well, defensively they're so open. Jefferson Lerma started it off yesterday, and it was 4-1, but it could have been 6 or 7. And Newcastle are not an attacking team. We're not.
No,
we're not an attacking team. We don't actually have that. For me, our centre mid isn't amazing, but John Joe Shelvey and Longstaff before he got injured were just walking around like no pressure on the ball, nothing. And I mean, for me, the biggest thing that tells me where Bournemouth are is that they're in a relegation battle. They have Ryan Fraser. He's been at the club 6-7 years, and he just.
Well, they don't anymore. He's just left, hasn't he?
I know, but don't you think he has no attachment to them? It's like, okay, yeah, we're going down. I'm not going to contribute.
I think that feeds into the recruitment that we were talking about before. I mean, like you said, they look at players. They just think, Premier League, young Liverpool player, he must be good, like Solanke, like Ibe. They pay all this money for him. Liverpool rake them over the coals for the money because they know they've got it, and they end up getting a lot of different players from all over who don't really fit into the team and don't really belong together. I mean, you can say what you like about our recruitment, but we always make sure that the players we get in do buy into the club, do fit into the dressing room.
I think they lost that centre or core. So I think this happens sometimes with Premier League clubs who've been in it for a few years. It's happened with Stoke in particular in their last year. Yeah. They kind of lost what made them so good. And Bournemouth was all about keeping the ball and moving it. I think they probably become a bit complacent, to be honest. I'll just say one thing. David Brooks is a brilliant player.
For sure.
He will get a move to a big club if they go down, no doubt. He's definitely there for me. I think he was injured pre-lockdown, so he's obviously had these 3 months to get back. But he's probably the jewel in their crown. Can't see. I mean, him and probably Ake. Can't see anyone else really.
Callum Wilson.
I don't think he's as good as he used to be. I think he had a really good spell. Obviously, got an England team, scored for England. Again, I think I was thinking yesterday with Eddie Howe, this is the typical case of someone staying too long and not moving at the right time because he had a lot of clubs interested. I think he was linked to Everton. He could have gone there, but now he probably will be. If they do, I think they will go down. If they do go down, he'll probably be given a chance to bring them back up. But his reputation will be tainted now. So because when he got them to like top half finishes, what more can he do with Mordva? Like there's not. I don't think there's taking Leicester out winning the Premier League out of it. The potential is very limited for these sorts of clubs.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I'm not so sure about the Everton one personally. I think that you're right in the sense that he needed to get a new environment, to get a new challenge. But I'm not necessarily sure that I think sort of mid-table Premier League manager is about his level really. Because I think when you consider all the money that he spent as well on these players, and I think
they gave Jermaine Defoe a massive contract.
Well, exactly, yeah. I think that taking the next step up to an Everton, and especially an Arsenal, who was linked with for ages, I can't see that happening at all. I can't see that working out at all.
Not now.
Well, even back then, even back in the day when he got Bournemouth to like 9th, I think it was. I still don't think he would have been. I just don't think he's good enough to make that step up personally. I mean, what he's done with Bournemouth. I mean, to be fair, you do not get a team from League 2 to the Premier League. I don't care how much money you spend. You don't get a team all the way up there without being a decent manager. But is he that top quality manager you need to manage a top club or even a European club like Everton?
I think things can go a bit stale as well. I think the classic example is Stoke. For me, Stoke were such a good team, very solid Premier League team, and they bought some bad players and they just went stale. I think the same things happened with Bournemouth, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Bournemouth's fixtures as well, Newcastle at home was really their last winnable game they have for a while. For the rest of the season, it's Manchester United away, Spurs at home, Leicester at home, Manchester City away, Southampton at home, and then Everton away on the final day. I mean, when you consider they're on 27 points right now, they're going to need at least 8 or 9 if they want a chance of survival. I can't see them getting that from those fixtures.
I mean, the goal they scored yesterday was in the 90th minute, and it was their first shot on target. So
yeah,
I mean, that tells you all I think about Bournemouth.
Yeah. And a quick word on your side. I mean, 42 points, you're safe by now. Sort of what's next for you guys, I suppose, aside from Takeover Watch?
I think it's very difficult because we don't really know what's going to happen. So it was an excellent performance. For me, I really want us to get the takeover because I'd love to see St. Maxim, who is class apart for me. He's the best player by far. I'd love to see him surrounded by real top quality. And, even players like Almiron played really well. Sean Longstaff did well when he was on the pitch. Shelby, was running the show. It was an excellent performance, but it's really weird because you're like, well, like if there's a takeover, how many of these players will stay? How many of these players will go? Like, will Steve Bruce stay? Like, I feel that Steve Bruce he's improved. He has improved with some of his decision making, but like everything with Newcastle, everything's dependent on the takeover. So if it doesn't happen, will probably be similar next year. If it does happen, then it could be an exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention. I mean, if you look at a club like Wolves, who have Adama Traore, who's an excellent attacking player, very similar to St. Maximin in terms of style. But they're getting, like you said, he's surrounded by quality all over the pitch, so he can really get to his best, and really they can utilise him properly. So I mean, speaking of Wolves, I mean that moves us very nicely into our next club in the relegation battle, Aston Villa. Lost 1-0 at home to Wolves on the Saturday before, so they're still in the bottom three, just 1 point away. But I mean, it's hard to see. I thought they had chances against Wolves, and they were okay, but they just didn't take them.
I don't think they got a very good striker in. I mean, that's been the biggest. Yep. I think they brought in Wesley, and he obviously got injured, but he wasn't scoring anyway. And then I think they got Sanata, and he's not been a success really. I think he scored in the League Cup final. He's not done much else.
Yeah.
I mean, when people talk about Villa, and then they say, oh, they spent over 100 million. I just wonder where that 100 million went.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's very similar to Fulham last year, where I didn't realise, like, who did they buy with this money? Because for me, again, like, they have an excellent player in Jack Grealish, but the rest of them are just very much, standard Premier League players. Nothing really. I think McGinn's a good player. McGinn and Grealish, but the rest of them, and I think the biggest issue is the strikers. Sure. They really didn't. They should have gone and got someone.
I mean, with Villa as well. I mean, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch. I mean, they've spent so much money this season, and they've been losing money, particularly on wages, for a long time. Yeah. I mean, I know they've got richer owners now, but I mean, I look at the state of Villa's finances, and I think, going down particularly, looks like they could well be going down. It
gets really complicated, isn't it, when they go down with FFP, because there's different FFP rules for the Championship compared to the Premier League.
Obviously, you've got the 2 years of parachute payments as well.
If they hadn't won the playoff final, then they would have had to pay some huge fines, and it would have been very restrictive. So, I think as well, I think their centre-backs and the defence generally is just too open, really. It's, if you're not scoring enough and you can't defend, that's a category for relegation, really. They may stay up, but I feel those bottom 6 teams, none of them are really that good. So they may stay up. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, their fixtures as well. I mean, I would argue it's no better than Bournemouth's. I mean, you've got Liverpool away next, you've got United at home, Palace at home, Everton away, Arsenal at home, and then West Ham away on the final day, which may or may not still have a chance of both teams going up or going down. Excuse me. So that'll be an interesting one for sure. And I mean, at the end of the day, all 4 teams have just been, all that bottom 4 and bottom 4 West Ham one have just been absolutely terrible between them. So it's like you can't really see where the points are coming from anywhere. So I can't really see anything changing in that sense. But I suppose a word on Wolves. They just keep going. They're like a machine, basically. I mean, look at the table here. Only Liverpool have lost less games in the league this season than Wolves. Wolves have only lost 6 this season. They've got a lot of draws as well, which is why they're not in the Champions League places. But you've got to say they're really, really in with a chance now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Wolves, and especially post lockdown, was that they've moved the Europa League now till the end of the season. So what that meant was they're not playing Thursday, Sunday. So because they don't have as big a squad as some of the other clubs in the top, so they've been able to kind of focus on the Premier League, and so I think it's been quite a big bonus for them, to be honest, because they've been able now to focus on the Premier League. So for me, Wolves have they've got very rich owners. They've got obviously the Jorge Mendes link. If they got into the Champions League, they would be able to attract big players because they can say, well, we've got Ruben Neves, we've got Adama Traore, we've got Raul Jimenez. They've got some really big players there. It might not be a big club in terms of fan base or global brand, but they've got the capability. And I have always, whenever Newcastle have played against Wolves, I've always appreciated that they have such a system that you kind of know that obviously they always play the 3-5-2, but their system is so set. They're really well drilled team, and if you add quality in there, then they are. I think they may just miss out on the Champions League. It will be very close between them, Man U, Chelsea, but I think they've had an incredible season, and especially I agree with you. Adama Traore he's improved so much. It's nice to see because a lot of these players just fizzle out, but he's really kicked on and become all about end product.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was the exact same thing when Zaha was here at us. First couple of years, he didn't really get that many goals or assists. Then he absolutely exploded for the last 3 seasons. Our best player.
Was he playing against Burnley? I didn't notice.
None of the team was playing against Burnley, as far as I'm concerned. You can't single him out. I
just want Andros Townsend to come back to Newcastle. I just watched him for Palace the other day, and I was like, it's not Andros Townsend.
I think he is. I mean, it's hard for me on Townsend because he does work hard and he clearly does love the club.
He's on Talksport now,
Well, yeah, exactly, and obviously his dad's all across the football media as well. But I think the fans are starting to be a bit, particularly compared to Wilf as well. He's just looks like such a stale player.
I just think he moved at the wrong time. He should have. He was doing well. I mean, anyway, that's another thing.
I'm not going to take your opinion too carefully on that. I mean, he has done well for us for a while. Obviously, he's got some great goals for us. I think that his time has probably come to an end. And would he get into the Newcastle team now?
I think I've always thought this with Andros Townsend, that he was playing so well for us those 6 months he was with us, that he would have kicked on if he was playing in that position all the time, because he was playing so well. When I watch him for Palace, I'm just like, that's not the same guy I watched. And I also feel like, why did he play so well for England in that spell where he was England's best player for 2-3 months, where he literally was a person you gave the ball to, and now he's like a shadow for me of the player. I
think it's because so much of the focus is on Zaha.
Very, very
was
strange.
On the likes of Cabaye and Loftus-Cheek when they were here.
Yeah, it's very, very strange.
Yeah, well, okay. There's one team left we have to talk about, and that's Watford. They lost at home to Southampton 3-1. I mean, that home form has been quite strong as well, especially since Pearson came in. I mean, obviously they thrashed Liverpool was the most notable one. They beat Man United, but I thought they were totally outclassed by Southampton on this one.
Watford have some really solid, real good players, and I personally think they will stay up. I just think they need to decide that is Nigel Pearson the guy for them long term, because they really need someone they know. I know it's worked for them before, but they do need someone who's going to be there for a while. I think it happens a lot. You change manager all the time, but eventually it catches up with you. So I think they had issues as well. Didn't they have 3 players were done for going to a lockdown party or something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
Here's Andre Gray. I remember reading.
I think, was it at Troy Deeney's house? I can't remember exactly who was involved, but I remember something like that was. I can probably find the story, but yeah, I think for a team, obviously when Pearson came in, he did so well and they were so well organised, but since then they've sort of fallen off the radar. I mean, I know when they came to Palace, they tried to kick the crap out of our players for 90 minutes, and that was it really. They didn't really offer much attacking threat, and I thought they were quite toothless. And it's been a bit. I think you're right. I think they've probably got enough about, a bit like West Ham. They've got enough about them that they'll squeeze out the results when they need them, and they'll survive. Especially when you look at the form of the bottom 3, the current bottom 3, who've been even worse.
I mean, Watford's not a Premier League club really. I mean, if I'm honest, they're in the shadow of Arsenal and Tottenham in that Hertfordshire area, really. They're probably the Championship is about right for them. So these these years. I mean, they got to an FA Cup final. I know they got absolutely destroyed, but that's a pretty good achievement for them, and they've had some decent finishes in the Premier League. I hope they stay up, because I'd rather them stay up than Villa and Bournemouth, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'd agree. I mean, it's ironic, of the three teams I probably want to go down, out of those six, Brighton, Watford and West Ham, are the ones that look like they're all going to stay up, which is just typical.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there you go. I mean, fair play to them if they can get whoever gets the most results anyway, at the end of the day. But as for Southampton, I mean, I saw a stat where I think it's their 8th win on the road all season, and their 13th. It's very similar to us last year, where it took us like 4 months to win a home game. It's been a strange season for them, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that the defeat to Leicester, where they lost 9, was it 9-1 or something?
9-0, yeah.
Yeah, 9-0. I think that kind of kicked their season. They had their moment where the penny dropped, and since then they've kind of reacted to it. Danny Ings has been excellent. He's been a real joy to watch. I mean, Southampton, very good players, but the problem you have with Southampton, a bit like Newcastle, to be honest, these clubs is whenever you get a really, really good player, you kind of know they're going to leave. It's so frustrating. I mean, I've experienced it where we've gone and bought these top players before back in the day. Now I feel like, we lose them, and I can't imagine what it's like as a Southampton fan when you see, Van Dijk, Mane, all these players that they've let go playing at top clubs now. Yeah, so I mean, again, it would be interesting to see what happens with them. Can they push on? I think the highest they finished was in the Premier League, I think is 7th or something like that.
I think they got 6th. The year when they lost Koeman.
Yeah. Again, it's until you say we're not going to sell, we're going to keep these players. Until that happens, it's always going to be the same. But they've done really well. Hassan Hutel really deserves a lot of respect. I'm sure there'll be clubs interested in him because he has he's got a nice style of play. I mean, I don't mind watching Southampton.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the problem with Southampton, under Pellegrino and then under Mark Hughes especially, was they sort of moved away from that philosophy they had of, homegrown players and the proper scouting network, selling on players for big money and then bringing in other players for fractions of that. And I think they've struggled with that in recent times. But more recently they've come back into that, and I think players 20 million for Danny Ings now looks like an absolute steal, and players like Bednarek as well. I mean, and obviously Højbjerg has been subject to a move.
He's available on the free, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's something where you'd have to say what's going on there, but because that's very much not in their ethos. Because normally when they do sell players like Van Dijk, like Mane, they get a great price for them, but not this time. So hopefully they can, for their sake, they can sort that out. But I think the key point for me is the manager. If they can keep Hassan Hutel for another year, I think he will be able to.
They've lost their managers, haven't they? They lost Poch and they lost Koeman.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, one thing we should probably mention is, once again, we're recording during the matches as they're being played. Manchester City versus Liverpool is currently on. And Manchester City have just taken the lead 1-0. Kevin De Bruyne with the goal. So, yeah, I mean, we'll get on to Manchester City shortly, because obviously there's a big talking point with them that's come about in the last couple of days. But first, I mean, the game that was played earlier today was Sheffield United versus Spurs. And again, we talk about Sheffield United being useless since the restart. They go and thrash Spurs 3-1. I mean, strange result, especially, we played Sheffield United and I thought they were dreadful, to be honest. I think Sheffield United is a team that usually, not today, they played really well today, they've done well. They need the fans. They need the fans on top of them and so forth. But, they've got a great result. That will give them some confidence. What's going on with Spurs, I have no idea. Spurs is a strange team. I think there was lots of things which happened. Obviously, they got Kane and Son back. But I just don't feel like everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet as Spurs. There were so many stories in lockdown about players breaking lockdown things and issues that Mourinho said he wanted more kind of older players. But yeah, I think it's a great result for Sheffield United. But like I was telling you before, somehow Newcastle are 3 points behind Spurs, which is crazy. Yeah, and by extent we're only 3 points behind Spurs as well. I mean, when they sacked Pochettino and brought in Mourinho, there was this sort of belief that they were doing it with the intent of getting immediate success, getting them that quick Champions League finish, and maybe even getting them a trophy or two. But that hasn't happened at all so far.
Yeah, I think we would talk about Mourinho at Man United. The one thing I find very strange, everyone says, "Oh, Mourinho is such a good defensive manager, such a good defensive manager." He's not even good at defending anymore. And people need to stop saying, "Oh, he's such a good defensive manager." He was a great defensive manager. His Chelsea side and his Inter Milan side are two of the best, meanest teams I've seen in terms of physicality, strength, how they defended. Incredible. But, in his spell with Manchester United, his defence was very open, and his Tottenham team, again, very, very open. I mean, I watched them against RB Leipzig, and they were torn to pieces.
Yeah.
And that's not a Mourinho team. And it's possible that maybe he needs a transfer window to bring in the players he wants. I found it really interesting that he was saying how, we can't compete with Man U, we can't compete. And I was like, when you were at Man U, you were moaning about
exactly. You built half
now
that team.
You're saying you want the chance. You had that, and it's. I mean, I just think that we need to he's not the same guy that he was. He was an incredible manager, but he has issues sustain long term, and his teams aren't the same way. So maybe football has moved on from those great Chelsea and Inter Milan sides. He even managed to take a title off Pep's Barca, which is possibly the greatest club side I've ever seen, to be honest. So he's done incredible things, but perhaps it is a long time ago as well. This has been happening for many years now. So yeah, it's.
No, I agree, and I think that Spurs possibly living in the past a little bit when they made that appointment. They hadn't quite clocked onto what you said about him. And I know at United they did all right in the second season. They came second, but they were so far behind City. It was sort of almost irrelevant how well they did in the end. I think that it is a shame because Mourinho has definitely been one of the bigger characters in football, if controversial.
Yeah, he's an excellent character, and he was an incredible manager, but we can't just keep pretending that he's the same guy. People keep saying he's a winner, and I'm like, whilst he's a winner, his Chelsea side, if he hadn't left, would have got relegated. They were that bad at the time. They were losing every match going.
I agree.
Same with that Manchester United side. People just need to let go. He's not the same person. It happens. Yeah.
No. I mean, moving on to Manchester City. A lot of the signs that have been coming out of there, and the news that's been coming out of there. There's news that they've agreed to sell Leroy Sane to Bayern Munich at the end of the season. That could earn them. That's due to cost 54.8 million. It's been a strange end to his career at Chelsea, hasn't it? Manchester City. You can tell how long I've been up.
It's Sane.
Sane, yeah.
I think he was the issue Sane had. It seems to me there was two main issues. One is the amount of competition in that position. So you've got Sterling, you've got Mahrez, you've got De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, all who can play in those roles really. And for me, I've seen City play live a few times, and he is the only one who literally is what I would say a direct winger. So he'll go to the line. Most of them cut in or inverted wingers. So, and if you ask a lot of City fans, if you ask them who their best winger is, they'll actually say it's Sane. But it sounds like he had some attitude issues. That's why he was left out the World Cup squad for Germany. Sounds like he had a bit of an issue with Pep. And then obviously he's had this injury now. So, I think for him, it's the right move because someone as good as he is shouldn't be on the bench. He should be playing for Bayern Munich, week in, week out. And I'm sure when he goes to Bayern, he's German. It makes sense for him to play for Bayern Munich. So he should hopefully kick on. He's been an excellent footballer for the Premier League. It's a shame that he's leaving the Premier League, to be honest, because scored some wonderful goals. I remember his goal against Liverpool for City as well in that really great 2-1 game. So, it's a shame he's leaving. But I think, for me at the moment, Bayern is the best team in Europe. They are playing some excellent football. So, it must have been an easy decision for him to go.
Yeah, I agree with you on all counts. I think that, excluding the one time where he was pocketed by Wan-Bissaka in his own backyard, He's been a sensational player in the Premier League. Obviously, a massive part of both the City's title wins. That goal against Liverpool alone basically won them the title then and there. But like you say, if it's
some of these players should never be on the bench. He's someone who shouldn't be on the bench.
Yeah, agreed.
I respect Pep, and it's so hard with the squad they've got. But someone like Leroy Sane shouldn't be on the bench. I know the thing is they have too many fantastic options, but he's been on. I know a lot of City fans were really annoyed last year when I think they played Spurs in the quarterfinals and he dropped Sane for the first leg, and I think then there's probably a bit of personality clash, but it just makes sense for him to go to Bayern. I mean, he's only got a year left on his contract, so
yeah,
City had to sell, or they could have lost him on a free. So
yeah,
but it'll be a good move for probably both, and I'm sure City will replace him with someone else if they're allowed.
No, I agree. I guess that's one of the when you have a big, expensive squad like City's. I suppose that's one of the downsides is that talented players can inevitably get put to one side. But speaking of Manchester City, they've doubled their lead against Liverpool. Raheem Sterling with the second goal. So I'm sure Liverpool fans are glad that they've wrapped up their title now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, City, it's a weird one because they've got this court of arbitration to the sport herein, which really, if I'm Kevin De Bruyne and I'm 28, 29, and you tell me that I'm going to have a year without the Champions League, it's going to go through my head that, I need to get every chance to win the Champions League. So they probably need to maximise their chances when Europe returns, but they're really dependent on what this court of arbitration for sport says, because some people might not be willing to stay if they get a 2-year ban. So I'm surprised Pep's saying he's definitely staying. I mean, I was really shocked when he said that.
Yeah, agreed. I think obviously Pep staying is the key one because he alone will be able to attract a higher quality player. Him not being there. But I think the lack of.
But then, if I'm a higher quality player, I want to play in the Champions League.
Yeah, it is.
As much as I want to play for Pep Guardiola, why not just wait until And the other thing I don't really understand is how are they going to? They're not in the Champions League. How are they going to be able to afford to maintain financial fair play without Champions League income? It's going to be tricky.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, let's move on to the main selling point of this podcast, which I actually forgot to do last week. Well, I say I forgot to do it last week. I was in charge. The Let's All Laugh At segment of the podcast. This is where we go through the more light-hearted parts of the football week and decide who is worthy of being laughed at this week, winning our award, so to speak. So, have you got anyone in mind, Andrew?
Bournemouth. Any team that lets Newcastle score 4 goals away from home deserves, and as well, I think the VAR decision for the goal yesterday was a bit dreadful.
Well, we're gonna have to do a Let's All Laugh Out for the season at some point soon. VAR may very well win that. Yeah, you can't argue with that. Bournemouth, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just think they need to change the rule to the benefit go to the attacker because people want to see goals. The whole reason you go to football is to see goals. So if it's 50-50, just give it to the attacker because that's what we want to see because goals change games. So
yeah, for sure. I've gone for a slightly different approach for my nomination. I've gone for Exeter City in League 2. They were in the playoff final against Northampton Town on Monday, I think it was. Yeah, Monday, same day as Palace Burnley. And not only did they lose 4-0 in the playoff final, also having a man sent off in the process, but this is now the third final in a row at Wembley that they failed to win. They lost to Blackpool in 2017, Coventry in 2018, and now Northampton in 2020. So, I mean, they must be absolutely sick of the place. I just thought it was quite amusing.
It reminds me of Bayer Leverkusen. I think it was in 2002. You probably weren't even born, George.
I would have been
I think they got
4 by then.
They lost the title on the last day. They lost the German League Cup final, and they lost the Champions League final. And just a sickener. I think Chelsea as well, under Avram Grant, had a similar year where they came second in the Prem, lost in the League Cup final, and then lost on penalties in the Champions League final. You think that Avram Grant would have been so close to a treble? It's crazy. Yeah, some people are just so unlucky.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was born then, but I wasn't actually following.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so you're right. I don't remember that. You're half right. But I think that, I mean, I've got to go for Bournemouth on this one, to be honest. I mean, even though it's
They're
technically
so
less
bad.
embarrassing.
They're so bad.
It is. I mean, the thing for me as well, when you consider
first goal, yeah, the guy's dawdling on the ball. Sean Longstaff, he's not quick, yeah. He somehow gets his foot in, and then like Gale obviously does what Gale does, unless it's against Man City in the Cup. So yeah, he's having a little bit of a renaissance, Gale, at the moment. He scored 2 in 3 or something. I was just
he did that for us as well. He'd be like useless for like 75% of the season, and then like the last 5 games, he'd get like 5 and 5.
I think if he starts every game, if he's been given the moments Joe Linton's got, he would have got 10 goals.
I don't know about that. I mean, he's a good finisher. He's a good finisher, but I'm not sure if he's.
His biggest issue is he doesn't have enough. His build-up play is not very good. When we were in the Championship, he was really quick. He's lost a bit of his pace as well. You know, I watched a couple of, I think, West Brom games last year, and he looked quick to me. But anyway, I'm sure he'll. You know, it's not. To be fair, it's when you've had a player who scored a lot of goals for you. It's nice to see them get a few goals again. So it was nice. But yeah, Bournemouth atrocious. Is like as well. They have a record, I think, that when they've gone down in a game, they've lost 17 and drawn 2. So
wow, I mean,
there's no fighting spirit really this season.
And you definitely need that when you're staying up. And
You need to be able, like, it's almost like once we scored, it was game over because they had no confidence.
Yeah, I think all that combined with all the money they've spent and the players that they've ended up acquiring have been, and obviously the whole Fraser situation. I think that definitely compounds it all for this week for sure. So yeah, I agree with you there. So yeah, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give us a follow, drop us a like if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Let's All Laugh At, or on SoundCloud at Let's All Laugh At, a football podcast. Thanks very much. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.